views expressed on this program are those of the host, guest, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station, its management, or other advertisers. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio.
Welcome to Conscious Confidence Radio, a timeless wisdom with Sarah Main. Follow host Sarah Main on her ongoing journey of conscious confidence and gain timeless wisdom to unleash unparalleled confidence. A conscious confidence. Learn to ignite the living spark of wisdom, a new narrative for fulfillment contained in Sanskrit and the ancient, powerful, engaging, and fun conscious conversations to discover your own magnificent true self. Learn to dispel the fear shadow as Sarah provides essential knowledge about embracing change and the power of transformation. Get ready. Conscious Confidence starts now.
Hey everybody, welcome to Conscious Confidence Radio. I'm right here, literally right here with Sarah Main, where she's normally in Australia, but we're here in the middle of Seattle. Actually, we are in downtown Seattle. A place that I moved to in 1994, and I love it here. It's great energy here, and it's great to have you here, Sarah.
Beautiful. It's wonderful to be here. It's wonderful to be with you and Jessica and everyone, and it is beautiful here.
It is gorgeous here. And you know, the thing, people ask me, what is it that drew me here? And this is part of today's conversation. And the only thing I could say, it's the energy.
Yeah.
And it's a level of creative energy here. When I lived on the East Coast, that was an energy that was more about getting things done. And I was masterful at getting things done. This is an energy about creating things. Not that they don't get done, but there's a creative process here that's embedded in the doing, I think. You know, for me, that's part of the conversation today. Because when we talk about something like conscious confidence, I don't want people to be confused about the fact that we're not talking about conceptualizing life. Because that could be a little misconception. Your book is not about conceptualizing life.
No.
It's about living life.
Yep.
Conscious confidence, a timeless wisdom, Sanskrit. We are talking about living life. But we're talking about a way to live life. And what I mean by that is, and you and I were just talking about a personal example using me because I'm out of alignment, right? You know, there's something in my life that is being called to be brought forward, and I'm not bringing it forward. And I've got a million reasons why, and because everybody here that knows me says, yeah, she's right, she's got all those things. But that's not it. But conscious confidence, in the time that you and I have known each other, you know, I've gotten to know a bit about your journey, but there's more to tell. And the more to tell has to do with your journey. And this is something that really needs to come forward, because I don't know that people will quite understand the impact, the power of what you're bringing forward without understanding your personal journey. Let's start at the beginning for you. And I know we've shared a little bit about this, about when this started for you, but this is a lifetime for you.
Yeah.
At least one lifetime.
Well, at least one lifetime to me. It did have a feeling of picking up where I left off. My parents, well, thank you for the beautiful introduction, and it's just so wonderful to be here.
Yeah, it's great.
My parents arrived from England after the war into Sydney. My father did flight training actually during the war in just out of Sydney. He was in the Fleet Air Arm, so he flew Spitfire planes, but he was in the Navy, so Fleet Air Arm. And he did some flight training, and he just loved Australia. So as soon as the war was over and he was demobbed, he married my mother, and out they came. So myself and my siblings, we were all born and raised in Sydney. Lucky us. But Dad and Mum were always searching, and they just wanted the wisdom. They wanted something, and they searched and tried all sorts of things that was available in the 50s and 60s in amongst raising a young family. and they didn't have any family of their own around, so people that they met became family. And then Dad discovered philosophy class, practical philosophy classes in the late 60s. And I can remember him coming home and saying to Mum, I found it. He knew. And they studied philosophy and meditation, and that was on offer. And that was unusual back in those days. You didn't talk about it. That was absolutely woo-woo spooky, crazy stuff. But he knew, and Dad was both Mum and Dad, very intelligent, practical people, still raising a family in the suburbs in Sydney, nothing different. He still put on his suit and briefcase every day and went off to the office, came home, all that sort of thing. And when in 1971, I was 10 years old, and I can remember being asked, would I like to come along?
Wow.
And I thought, yes, please, I want what they're having. I didn't know much more about it that. I sat in adult classes. I didn't, most of the time, have a clue what they were talking about. Just the language just was over my head. And yet, inside here, I was completely in sync. I didn't want to be anywhere else. And then as I got a bit older, it was like a radio tuning in. And I remember it distinctly. I'd hear a sentence, a word, a phrase, a whole. And as I got, by the time I was 16, it was like the radio was completely tuned. I understood what they were talking about. And I was introduced to meditation at the age of 10, a mantra meditation. And at that age, it's simple. It's direct. The connection's there, and it's just, I don't know what life is like without it. And of course, I introduced to Sanskrit by the age of 13, and just it's gone on from there. And then I taught in a school where all of this was part of the curriculum. A normal private school in Sydney, so uniforms, we wear school uniforms in Australia mostly. Had all the sort of taught maths and English and all the standard subjects, and Sanskrit and philosophy, and we offered meditation to children from the age of 10. So by now we were educating properly like this, and it was just remarkable. And the children I have taught, the parents I've worked with, the adults I've taught, is an incredible blessing and an honour and a privilege, but I've learned so much.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about that when we come back from break too, because there's part of teaching, and this is something I learned, right, in a number of different ways. As the teacher, they say if you really want to learn something, teach it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And so I just thought, at first I thought what that meant was, you're going to do the research, you're going to study, but that's not what it was.
No.
If you're going to teach it, you're going to be faced with questions about what you teach, or you're going to be faced with explorations about what you teach that go far beyond anything you thought you were studying or knew about something. And when you step out to teach it, you too become transformed again, right? As a student and as a teacher. But the teachings of this and your journey, right, move us forward to a time where people question their own abilities today. They doubt, their level of self-worth. We're talking about rates of depression, which have to do with a sense of hopelessness.
Yeah.
And it's not, generational, it's multi-generational. And folks are not quite sure what to do. But that's because, what we're talking about is shifting energies, momentum, mindset, right?
Consciousness.
Yeah. When we come back, we're going to talk about not only what Sanskrit has to do with conscious confidence, but the elements that you have now put in and are sharing in the book. The elements, the process, what it is when you talk about shadow. When we come back, we're going to take you all on a journey of that. And of course, all of this is going to be in Sarah's upcoming book, Conscious Confidence, to be released. But you can pre-order it now. Just go to our website, consciousconfidence.com. In addition to all of this, one of the things that we'll talk about is how did this early knowledge now turn into a way for Sarah to work with kids, to work with adults, to work with business managers and executives? How does this now move forward a different level of teaching and learning? And what is it that has transformed lives so brilliantly? Let's take a short break, everybody. We'll be right back. Thanks. And I'm going to ask you about the top 3 pointers you'd give to a new teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was thinking about
And then what changes have you seen? Because if I ask you about what changes, then that's a story.
Yeah, okay.
Because, you know, as a coach, you have had to see people transform
Oh, yeah.
and change.
Oh,
Yeah. You let
Lovely.
that fly in. It's not really a fly.
yeah. Ready? Do this.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Conscious Confidence Radio. I get to really share this journey with Sarah Main, who is here with me today. She's also the author of Conscious Confidence, and as we have said before, lots of kudos to, you know, her new publisher, Inner Traditions. Thank you for doing that, and of course, thank you for you, Sarah, to bring this forward. The book is also, it has some of the things we're talking about, but it has much more. You know, while educating us about the power of this, you also share some very powerful stories. You know, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about is you must have learned things as a new teacher and bringing things forward.
Yeah.
But you also must have seen in front of you as a teacher lives change and transform.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the part that people are going to really be amazingly surprised about in the book.
Yeah.
You know, when you share these stories, powerful stories, it's an example of what's possible.
Unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, some of the stories are remarkable. This is a story that isn't in the book, but
Okay.
it struck me when you were introducing just then. There was a girl in my class. She was in year 4, so she's about, I don't know, 9 years old. And unhappily, her grandfather on her mother's side drops dead suddenly, has a heart attack and dies. And her mother naturally is devastated, but she notices her daughter, who's now at a school where she's being introduced. Under 10 years old, they didn't get formal meditation, but from day 1 at 5 years old, we had an exercise called a pause, which is in between each lesson, beginning and end. The children, we all just fell still for a moment of mindfulness, you would say these days, using the term mindfulness, which has occurred. Presence, and you let everything go, come into the present moment, and then attend to what's going to arise, and we offer a short prayer of what's to come. And then at the end of the lesson, fall still again and let whatever has occurred release. Right, so this is an exercise in simplifying in itself, which is part of the Fuse program. Right, let it come and then let it go. So the energies are not tumbling into each other all through the day. So this girl's got that advantage. She's having the Shakespeare, all sorts of elements, Sanskrit, the lot. So her beloved grandfather unexpectedly passes away. And this girl, the mother notices her daughter has a certain steadiness about her and a breadth. There's just something about her that is seeing this from another perspective. And it awakens the mother in amongst her grief of losing her father suddenly. She says, I want what she's getting. And the mother starts her own spiritual journey based on how she saw her 9-year-old daughter respond and live through that part of their life. And she's now meditates and teaches other people, and that started her spiritual journey. And that made a big impression because I was just doing what I did every day. It was my job.
Yeah.
Right. And you don't know the effect it's having.
Right.
You know, simple things like that are profound. There's another story in the book of another change. I I have to think of all the different stories. There are so many, seriously. Well, there's one. In terms of attitude, the school principal was my husband, and the deputy, very dear friend at the time, he was the deputy at the time, he's still a dear friend, both brilliant men, and they made a conscious decision to have a positive attitude, and it was a conscious decision. And I hadn't quite got to the realisation I needed to make an absolute conscious decision, like I would choose an apple rather than an orange. I was going to choose a positive attitude rather than a negative one, right? I was not going to let my mind go down there. Anyway, they made this conscious decision. They didn't tell me at the time. And they kept on talking about opportunities. And this was early on. Now these days, this is part of the literacy, but at the time, this was a bit new, right? And they would talk about it. Anyway, there was one day where I was standing next to my husband, right, and he's the school principal. I'm a teacher. We're standing in the playground. It's recess, morning recess. The kids are all playing. And the deputy walks towards him with this smile on his face, hands in his suit pockets, because they both wore suits and ties. Right?
Yeah.
Hands in his pockets. And he smiles and he goes, "Well, headmaster," because in Australia we had an English sort of element that we called headmaster. "Well, headmaster, we appear to have another opportunity." And they burst out laughing. And I got it, because there'd been some behavioural incident in the playground of a serious nature that required the principal's attention, right? And they just smiled and they said, "Terrific." They both looked at each other and said, "Great." And they walked off. Now you could say, "Oh no, something's happened, the kids have done this." No, they saw it as an opportunity, because dealing with behaviour was a learning opportunity. It was a learning for everyone, and particularly the people involved. And they took it at that, they always took that approach. And that made such an impression on me at the time, rather than labelling it as a problem and a disaster and
then creating a story around
creating
it.
a story.
It's the story that gets us into a lot of trouble.
And the opportunity, and then I watched them solve and resolve these issues, and everyone learnt. And generally speaking, it didn't happen again if the learning was right. And that is a real generosity of spirit. It's real intelligence. It's open-heartedness. And sometimes kids had to have detentions, and there was consequences, but there was always learning and restitution in the whole process. And I learned so much from that. That's in the book.
I have to tell you, this I think has worn off on us, because it's so funny, right, Jessica? Jessica's sitting over here. You can't see her on camera, but maybe we'll show you later. Because we now have a new level of awareness around this, right? It's Jessica, myself, and Linda, right? And even if it happens, so in any given day, there are at least 10 to 15 situations like that. And so what we're now mindful of, and I'm not sure exact words that we do, but I'm not sure who started it either, but there'll be an incident, and it could be a simple incident, like, oh gosh, the back-end photo uploading situation, we just need to have a programming glitch. And what we'll do with that in the past is we'll then create a story. Well, maybe what happened was, and we go off on it, and we start to do this with a number of things. So now what happens is, the minute one of us does that, the other person will say something like, "Okay, that's a story. That's just the story we don't need to tell."
Yeah.
So let's just stop creating a story around a thing, because it's not even a factual perspective. It's trying to find meaning out of something where there is no need to find the meaning out of it.
Yeah, it's unnecessary.
It's face value. It's a thing.
And
it's like a thing.
That is one of the examples of simplifying. If you want conscious confidence, you need to be able to just let go of the things that are unnecessary, not essential, and go with the essential.
One of my friends is the cousin of Russell Wilson. Uncle. Russell Wilson's one of Russell Wilson's uncle, and he was my boss when I worked in the phone company. And we were chit-chatting about this a little bit, and he said to me, he's just really a great, jolly guy too, brilliant man. And he he starts to laugh, and he says, now look, Pat. Now look, Pat. Look at the Seahawks. Now look. You know, do you ever see any of the players that miss a catch or fumble the football? Now look, Pat, do you ever see him come to the sidelines and try to talk to people around making a story about why they fumbled? No, they get back in the game.
Yep.
But that's not as easy as you think. When we're going to come back, we're going to talk about conscious confidence helps with that.
Yes.
Because I think you have to learn that,
yes.
right? But it does start with a decision.
Yes.
Let's take a short break, everybody. We'll be right back with Sarah Main and Conscious Confidence.
Imagine that you can create anything you choose. Literally, imagine it. Join us to explore the neuroscience of imagination, intention, and ClearSpeak. Tune in to ClearSpeak Talk Radio with Dr. Ned Wolf on TransformationTalkRadio.com. Every fourth Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern, as she explores how your inner dialogue, your conversations, and the words you choose to use can help set goals you keep. Achieve greater health and resources and feel the ease and flow of loving your life. For more information, visit JeanetteWolf.com.
Is traditional medicine not working for you? Do you still feel as if your health isn't 100%? Here at the Holistic Medical Center, Dr. Nushin Darvish and the qualified staff look through the dimensions of wellness and start a healing plan prioritized to your needs. Our physicians assess the whole you until complete health is achieved. Get the help you need by visiting drdarvish.com or call 425-451-0404.
Have you ever wondered how you might feel differently if the books were full of her instead of him? What if your history lesson was filled with powerful women leaders and rulers? As a woman, would you feel more empowered? As a man, would you see women differently? I'm Megan Edge. I'd love for you to join me on my radio show, Playing on the Edge, Radical Change with Ease, with my co-host, Dr. Pat, on Transformation Talk Radio. I hope to see you there.
To find answers to life's questions, you need to look within yourself. Dr. Glenna Rice brings your questionable conversations on Transformation Talk Radio each month. Tune in each month for insight into how you can live up to your full potential. Dr. Glenna is a physical therapist, certified Access Consciousness, and Access Body Class facilitator. How does it get any better than this? For more information on Dr. Glenna Rice and her work, visit glennarice.com.
Tune in to The Truth is Funny with Colette Steffen each Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern on TransformationTalkRadio.com. This hit show will have you thinking outside the box and riding the wave of infinite potential. Join Colette on the Higher Self Network, inspiring listeners to shine their brilliance and ensure success while roaring with laughter as they recognize the humor of the giant cosmic joke. Visit TheTruthIsFunny.com.
Choose the new earth on the Cornelia Stephanie Show. Tune in each week on Transformation Talk Radio as Cornelia takes listeners on an odyssey of higher consciousness to inspire, educate, and empower. Cornelia guides people on the path of self-healing, peace, and liberation. The Cornelia Stephanie Show is your catalyst for anchoring heaven on earth on a global scale. For more information, go to corneliastephanie.com.
Welcome back to Conscious Confidence Radio. Sarah Main is the host of Conscious Confidence Radio. She's also the author of the book, Conscious Confidence, A Timeless Wisdom. And so here's what I want to say about this. Many of you could go to her website and you can listen to the many shows she's done. But the one thing in particular is this, especially now in the series we're doing. It's one thing to talk about conscious confidence. But we were talking during the break, and I'm not sure if we have any outtakes from it, but we were talking about how important it is to implement, these teachings in our lives. And we were laughing a little bit, in the last segment because, those of us that are on a journey, when you have a number of things in any given day that show up, we tend to want to create a story around them. And so now we have a little mantra after, I guess, we roll our eyes, to basically say, okay, that sounds like a story. But part of this is adapting and implementing in our everyday lives. And this is not something that you had to have gotten at age 13.
No, I had to learn it.
Yeah.
And there are areas in your life where it comes more easily and there are areas that it doesn't. And it does change as you meet more experiences and opportunities in life. And patience was one of them.
Oh.
But I thought there must be real patience, genuine, true patience. That's a beautiful thing, and I'd see people that seem to be infinitely patient, whereas I was about something. And I thought, I've got to actually take myself in hand. And I was, tired and stressed. I was a busy teacher. I had a lot on, and a lot of administrative responsibilities in the school, and all sorts of things. And I was conducting choirs because choral program, a key part of the school's curriculum was an emphasis on singing, on Sanskrit and on Shakespeare. All sound-based things, notice, because it purifies the language and the sound. Singing, Sanskrit and Shakespeare. And the singing was really good quality music. Mozart, Handel, Haydn, beautiful things, Bach, beautiful things. And some contemporary composition as well, but it had to be beautiful. And the words had to be uplifting and fine. So I'm preparing for a concert, and I think we had some Handel in there, and it's a bit of some Vivaldi, and some beautiful folk songs as well, gorgeous. And I'm busy, it's exam time, I'm writing reports, and I've got these big rehearsals with 80 plus children in the choir, singing 3-part harmony, so there's detailed teaching. And I'm stressed, and I'm snapping, right? And so I'm basically unconscious. I'm asleep. I'm sleepwalking, okay? I'm not conscious making good choices. And I thought, I've got to do something to give myself a break. What can I do to stay in memory? And it was right around the time of Harry Potter coming out, and his cloak of invisibility was, And I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll make this fun for everyone. So I went round to the local toy shop, and they had some leftover Halloween things, which Halloween was terribly big in Australia. It's a bit more now, but anyway, they had this white cloak. So I bought it on sale. It was a nice white cloak, actually. And I bought some fabric paint, colourful paint, and I wrote all over it stars, breathe, calm, peace, shanti, which means peace in Sanskrit, kshama, which means patience, which comes from the same root as shanti, so they're all related. I had all these, and I wrote it all over, and so I decorated it. And then I put it in a bag, and then the next rehearsal, I turn up with my music on the music stand, and I said, just wait, and I get this out, and the children are all waiting, and I put it on, and we pause, come to the present moment, dedicate, let everything go, and here we are ready, new energy for rehearsal. And I said, children, I just turned it around, and they could read all the Sanskrit, of course, and the English, and they all laughed. And I said, children, I'm practicing. This is my new practice. I really, really want to practice patience and not snapping and all of that. I said, I need your help to stay in memory. All I need is your presence and patience with me and understanding I'm working on this.
That's beautiful.
And the cloak is to help me stay in memory. If I'm wearing it, I'll feel it and I'll know it. Anyway, it was magic because I stayed awake. Well, that's all I needed was to stay awake and present and conscious. And when I felt something rise, I would fall still, let it go, and then respond. Completely different energy. Calmly, quietly, speak to the child that the behaviour was disruptive. All fine. And the children were fantastic because they loved it. And I did this leading right up to the performance. big end-of-year concert we did every year. And I did this for some months, and then one day I just forgot to pick up the bag with the cloak. But I didn't need it anymore because it was within me. And I never went back to that cross-harried, snappy person. When I was in front of the children teaching, it went in through all my teaching, went into other areas. But I needed to consciously do something like that. You know, and that's where you have to learn, and you can learn, you can practice, and it does transform. And if you do it, it transforms. And that's what my book's full of practices. You don't have to buy cloaks and write things on them, but you know,
I like that one though.
Yes, there's plenty of practices.
Halloween's my favorite holiday.
So all the chapters have practices in them, so that you can actually experience the knowledge. This is not some distant, obscure, theoretical thing. This is practical. It's real. It's transformative.
I'm so glad you shared that story, because I think sometimes when we talk about things like Sanskrit and the people that bring these messages forward, we almost put sort of this cycle, this like halo glow around folks without realizing that the reason we bring the things forward that we bring forward is because it's our own life journey to really move towards a place where we can fully be that in life.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, I think about this in a lot of different ways, and this idea of restraint from emotion and reacting to others.
Yeah.
I think that chapter alone in your book should be pasted all over social media. Because we now live in a world, Sarah, where if you have a moment like that and you hit that button, you can't get it back. No. You can't get it back in the world. And you know, there are ways to apologize for it or talk about it. But the real blessing is in learning how to do what you just did. But you know what I loved about that story, even more than the actual, it's your approach with the children and your vulnerability.
Well,
your vulnerability.
Plato says about education, he said a teacher, rather than admonish children, should live up to their own admonishments. And that was what directed my actions. And also the Upanishads say the ends are the means and the means are the ends. So if you want to be patient, if you want patience, you need to practice patience. The way to patience is patience. You know, and that sounds obvious, but you need to hear that. And that means, okay, how am I going to start practicing patience was my question. And that's what came to mind, was this cloak of patience. I called it the mantle of patience. Children, just let me put my mantle of patience on. No, and they'd laugh, but they knew I was practicing. And when my husband and I took up ballroom dancing, which we did about 12 years ago, look, I was studying and practicing, but taking up something where I was actually learning. My husband and I were now engaged in the learning process, again, in a whole new area that we had I certainly had no experience of. And it made me a better teacher of math, of English, of anything, because I understood from the inside, again, what the children were going through when they were learning something. So I was and I said to children, now that I'm learning dancing, I said, I get it when you're finding something's really hard, because I'm finding things are hard sometimes in dance lessons. And I was having to go back and access how I got through those difficult things and perseverance in class, in dance class. Then I could help the children. And so you've always got to be learning and working on yourself if you're going to help people. And certainly with children, you live by your own admonishments. Can I tell you a story?
Yes, please.
This is a traditional story. It's so lovely and I love it, and I've told the children for years. It's a traditional story. There was a single mother, I think her husband had died, and she had a young boy and he ate sweets, too many sweets, and she knew it wasn't healthy for him. So she took him to the local wise man of the village, and she said, tell him, he'll listen to you, tell him not to eat sweets because he's not listening to me and I keep trying to get him to stop eating sweets. And he said, okay, come back in 2 weeks. So she goes away, she has to travel and all of that. And she comes back in 2 weeks, and the kid's still eating sweets. And he says, stop eating sweets. And she said, why didn't you say that 2 weeks ago? Why do we have to travel? I schlepped this child. Anyway, he said, because I ate sweets, and I had to stop eating first so that I could say to the child, don't eat sweets. That's the story. Simple, but boy, does that story pack a punch.
And not only does it pack a punch, but it really is at the core of some systemic behavior too. Let's take a short break. When we come back, let's talk more about this, because what we're touching upon is, my grandma, in her own half-English language phrase, would yell at my uncles so seriously, my mom's mom would yell at my uncles so seriously about how they acted. And, her lesson to them was, I didn't know till later how important this lesson was to my uncles, but her lesson was, basically what you're talking about is that you can't show up like this. I mean, 15 Italian words boiled down to, don't come in my house if you're going to act like that. And, what it meant, though, was, isn't it funny, I remember that. So you see the impact of that,
yep.
Right?
Yep.
The impact of that was her saying to them, you can do that on the street, whatever that is you're doing, but you cannot do it in this home.
Yeah.
And, to this day, I remember what that lesson was about. I also remember exactly what they were doing. It was one of those examples in my young childhood where all of us as children learned to curse in Italian. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back. everybody, welcome back. Welcome back to Conscious Confidence Radio with Sarah Main and with me. I'm Dr. Pat. You know, Sarah, I know that folks are going to be able to get a copy of the book. Here's what I'm struck by, because we were talking a little bit about how I feel out of alignment with what I do in the world, and a part of what I know and is shared with me in my meditations that I need to be doing more of. And that is getting back out speaking my own personal platform. I enjoy so much helping all you do that. For sure, it's like my first love, right? People think doing the radio show is my first love. It's actually not. But many folks don't know I do that work with you.
Yeah.
It's like a little secret.
Yeah.
But I love that work because I get to watch things be born. But I must ask you this, because we don't talk about this enough. I think there's a strength and a body of courage that you had to exert to come forward and take this out in the world and do the book. I mean, maybe I'm projecting about my own scenario, but I don't think I am, because we've taken this journey together. And you had never done a radio show before, and I think that is a courageous act in itself. People don't know that every time I get on air, 15 years later, I still have butterflies. They don't know that. I would like for you to talk about conscious confidence courage for a moment, if you could, because I don't think we've ever talked about it, but I'm really struck by it now, because here you are in the United States, you're in Canada, you're going to LA, and to really physically take this forward is different than being back home and talking about it. Tell me about the courageous part of this journey and how it shows up in others that you teach.
Yeah, well, it is saying yes. Just saying yes changes the energy, opens up the opportunities. If you say no, there's a blockage, there's a resistance. No, yes. Okay, say yes. And then figure out how afterwards. And that's where the conscious confidence comes in, that what will be needed is provided, and it always is, step by step, and that's in the book, step by step. And at each step stands waiting what's needed for that step. Padam padam pratipadam arhati iti pratipadikam in Sanskrit. Okay, I was taught that from a young age, and that gives you huge confidence, just trusting that what's needed is provided. I had no idea, but just taking the step. But over the, through the journey, there was all sorts of things. Who am I to write this? I don't have all that sort of imposter stuff, right?
Yeah.
Looking for outside permission to do this, and all the time, the conscious confidence is being conscious of those things, not judging them, not resisting them, just saying, okay, they're just natural things that come up. There's plenty written on a lot of all of that sort of stuff. But I just took it from the approach that I know, and that was coming back to stillness each time, falling still in the present moment, remembering who I am in truth, and that's what the wisdom traditions tell you. I trust that above anything else, that you are universal. You are a universal being, universal consciousness. And then this has come forward. This is an opportunity. Say yes. And it's an act of service. And then let whatever else rises, gets in the way, let it go. And learning to surrender that. And then just keep proceeding step by step. And that, excuse me, it does, pardon me, take courage, takes persistence, takes understanding, compassion. All those qualities are brought in. And if one's not necessarily a strength, then you jolly well get a bit stronger at it as you go along. But keeping going is the thing. And certainly in my upbringing, I'm sure in yours, it's a generational thing. We were told to persist, not give up. We carried on regardless. You carried on regardless of the weather or anything else. You just carried on. And there's great value and virtue in that, because there'd be plenty of times where I could have thought, look, this is just...
My stepmom taught me that, and I've shared that story
too hard.
Times. My stepmom.
Yeah. But you need it, that is something you need to learn if you are to fulfil and offer what you have to offer to people, And I didn't know. I'm still learning what there is to offer.
And I am too. And I say that and people really look at me like, no. But I am. And, what happens with that is, it is 3 o'clock in the morning, wake up and hold back from texting Jessica at 3. I get away with Linda because it's 6. But holding back from saying, oh my gosh, I got a great idea, right? That would put her into a nightmare stage because that happens. But there's something that you have to believe in. It's interesting. John Holland is a friend of mine, and he is a psychic, and he is known for his abilities. If you've ever seen him live, you are astonished at what he sees. And he was on my show many years ago, and he says, I got to tell you, Australia's coming up for you. Remember that? He said, I got to tell you, Australia, Pat, it's big. And you have to know where I was
Kangaroos.
a number of years ago with this. And he said, I'm just telling you, there's something really huge about Australia. Just, and it's going to be with you for like a lot of years. And I'm thinking, okay, and I said to him during the break, John, this is going to be the first time in your life you're wrong. And we're going to be able to prove it because I'm going to come back a year from now and you're going to come on the show and I'm going to point out to you that you're wrong. But there was a part of me that believed him.
Right.
A year later, had him back on the show because Sean Eisen had picked up the show and was playing it on 25 FM stations in Australia and is still doing it today.
Wow.
3 years later, and every time I have an Australia interaction, I have to call John, by the way, so believe me, I told him about you. 3 years after that, Olivia Newton-John shows up on my door.
Right.
She had an album, Grace and Gratitude, most beautiful music. She showed up. The courage and the confidence to interview her was daunting. But what you were talking about, if this message is not taken to the world, the courage that we need to transform the earth, and to do it in a way with ease and grace, it will be missed. Because I think the reason, Sarah, you've been asked to do this, and you personally have been asked to do it, is because you've already faced courageously what it means to live this life. So you're not writing from an academic, and you're not teaching, and you're not speaking, and the TED Talk that you'll do will not be from some hypothetical perspective on how this works or doesn't work. It's embedded with ancient vibrational wisdom. And that's why it's yours to do. And I didn't know it when we first met. I knew it was yours to do. And I wanted to make sure that we honor you for that, because this is a full plate. This is not something, my words, for the lighthearted. This calls for your transformation. All of us here listen to your show, and we change because of it.
Thank you.
Yep. I get to beat up my table tennis coach because focus is not my issue. It's simplifying.
You heard it here first.
Thank you for today. You heard it here. Oh, no, I mean, Sarah. She can come to my lesson with me tonight. Thank you, Sarah, for everything. We're going to talk more about it.
Thank you.
But I want to ask you what your message is today and what you want to leave us with, as you always do with every show.
Well, in Sanskrit, I'm going to chant to you the peace prayer. It's from the Yajurveda, which is, ancient, timeless. I prefer timeless to ancient because this wisdom is always present. It's a stream of consciousness that provides humanity with this connection to consciousness and wisdom at all times. And the Yajurveda has a beautiful prayer. For the want of a better name, it's called the Peace Prayer, but it doesn't really have a title. And it is wishing or blessing peace on all aspects of life and of the world and of ourselves. It's a 360-degree blessing of peace. It's very beautiful. So this is the peace prayer from the Yajurveda. In heaven peace, peace in the space between. On earth peace, on the waters peace. In plants peace, in trees peace. Peace in all powers, in spirit peace. Peace in everything, peace, alone peace. Om, peace, peace, peace. Om Dhyau Shanti, Antarikshan Shanti, Prithvi Shanti, Apa Shanti, Oshadhaya Shanti, Vanaspataya Shanti, Vishwe Deva Shanti, Brahma Shanti, Sarvang Shanti, Shanti Reva Shanti, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Beautiful, thank you. Sarah Main, everyone. Conscious Confidence Radio, I'm with Dr. Pat.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Confidence with Sarah Main. Join us next month on Transformation Talk Radio for more timeless wisdom with Sarah's exciting and innovative approach to living. Discover more joy, freedom, and step into your limitless potential. For more information on Sarah Main and her work, or to listen to past shows, visit sarahmain.com.